The Zarnak Raiders were the galaxy's most feared predators. They did not conquer. They did not negotiate. They hunted. For 1,000 years, their sleek, black ships had stalked the space lanes, preying on the weak, the slow, the unprotected. They had never been defeated. They had never even been challenged. Their reputation was a weapon as deadly as their plasma cannons. Then they found a human vessel. It was a small transport ship, unarmed, unescorted, carrying a cargo of colonists and supplies to a remote outpost. The raiders surrounded it with ease. Their commander, a scarred veteran named Vrax, broadcast a mocking message across the human ship's frequency. "You are ours now. Do not resist. Resistance will only make your deaths more interesting." The humans did not respond. They did not plead. They did not even seem afraid. Vrax was amused. "They are frozen with fear," he told his crew. "Easy prey." He ordered his ship to close in for the capture. The human vessel did not try to flee. It did not try to hide. It simply waited. Vrax found this strange. Prey usually ran. This ship was sitting still. He ignored the feeling. He was a raider. He did not doubt. He acted. He gave the order to board. The boarding party never returned. Their signals went silent. Vrax sent a second party. They also vanished. A cold unease spread through his fleet. The human ship had not fired a shot. It had simply absorbed their hunters. And now it was waiting for the next move. Vrax finally understood. The humans were not prey. They were bait. Vrax ordered a full scan of the human vessel. The sensors showed nothing unusual, no weapons, no shields, no energy signatures. The ship was a ghost that had swallowed his hunters. He made a decision. He would destroy the human ship from a distance. He ordered his fleet to open fire. Plasma bolts streaked across the void. They struck the human vessel. They did not damage it. They did not even scratch it. The energy was absorbed, as if the ship was drinking it. Vrax was stunned. He had never seen anything like it. He ordered more fire. More plasma. More missiles. The human ship absorbed everything. Then it transmitted a single message on all frequencies. It was not a threat. It was not a plea. It was a question. "Do you want to know what happens to those who hunt humans?" The message ended. The ship powered down. It went silent. Vrax waited. Nothing happened. He was confused. He ordered his fleet to continue firing. Nothing happened. He ordered his ships to withdraw. They did not move. Their engines had gone silent. Their weapons had gone cold. Every ship in his fleet had lost power. Not destroyed. Not damaged. Simply silenced. Vrax felt a cold dread. The humans had not fought back. They had simply waited. And now the raiders were trapped. Vrax sent a desperate message to the human ship. "What have you done?" The human reply was a single word. "Listened." The Zarnak fleet was paralyzed. No power, no weapons, no engines. They drifted in the void, helpless. The human ship remained, silent and patient. It had not fired a single shot. It had simply waited for the raiders to exhaust themselves. Now it was their turn. A hatch opened on the human vessel. A small shuttle emerged. It approached Vrax's flagship. It docked without permission. The raider crew stood frozen, unsure what to do. They had never been boarded. They had never been attacked. They did not know how to respond. The shuttle's door opened. A single human stepped out. She was small, unarmed, wearing simple gray clothes. Her name was Alara. She walked through the raider's ship as if she owned it. She did not look at the crew. She walked to Vrax's command center. She sat down in his chair. Vrax was stunned. "Who are you?" he demanded. Alara looked at him with calm eyes. "I am the one who listened. I heard your ships. I heard your weapons. I heard your fear. And now I am here to tell you what happens to those who hunt humans." She paused. "You are not the first. You will not be the last. But you will be the one who learns." She stood up. She walked back to her shuttle. She left. The fleet remained silent. The paralysis lasted for 3 days. The raider fleet drifted, powerless, while the human ship watched. Vrax and his crew grew desperate. They tried everything: manual overrides, backup systems, emergency power. Nothing worked. The human technology was beyond their understanding. They were prisoners in their own ships. On the 3rd day, the power returned. Not gradually. All at once. The engines hummed. The weapons glowed. The systems came back online. Vrax was relieved. He ordered an immediate retreat. The fleet jumped away from the human ship as fast as it could. They traveled for hours, putting distance between themselves and the terrifying vessel. When they finally stopped, Vrax took a breath. He had survived. He had escaped. But something was wrong. His scanners showed something impossible. They had not moved. They were exactly where they had been. The human ship was still there, still waiting. Vrax looked at his crew. They were pale. They were afraid. They had not escaped. They had been allowed to leave. And now they were back. The human ship transmitted a final message. This is what happens to those who hunt humans. You will always come back. And we will always be here. Learn. Or never leave. The raider fleet tried to flee again. They jumped to a different system. They jumped to a third. Each time, they found themselves back in the same place. The human ship was always there. Always waiting. Vrax was losing his mind. He had never encountered anything like this. He had hunted 100 species. He had never been hunted himself. Elara sent a new message. You cannot run. You cannot hide. You cannot fight. You can only learn. The lesson is simple. Do not hunt humans. It is not a threat. It is a fact. Like gravity. Like time. Like death. Vrax demanded to know how they were doing it. Elara's reply was brief. We are not doing anything. We are simply here. You are the ones who keep returning. You are the ones who cannot leave. Why do you think that is? Vrax was silent. He had no answer. He had never asked why he hunted. He had only hunted. He had never questioned the urge. He had never thought about the prey. He had only seen them as targets. Now he was being forced to see. To question. To learn. He did not want to learn. But he had no choice. The humans had given him one. Learn. Or never leave. Vrax spent days staring at the human ship. He watched it. He studied it. He tried to understand it. He found nothing. No patterns, no weaknesses, no logic. The ship was a mystery. And mysteries, he realized, were what he had always feared. He had hunted to avoid mysteries. He had hunted to feel in control. Now he was being forced to face what he had been running from. A young crew member approached him. Commander, I have heard stories. Stories about humans. They say that humans have something the rest of the galaxy does not. They say that humans have patience. Vrax dismissed the idea. Patience is not a weapon. The crew member shook his head. It is. It is the most powerful weapon. The humans waited. They did not attack. They did not threaten. They simply waited. And we could not escape. Because we could not wait with them. Vrax was silent. The crew member was right. The humans had not defeated them with weapons. They had defeated them with patience. Patience that the raiders did not have. Patience that the raiders could not match. Vrax realized that the hunt was over. He had been out-hunted. Not by a predator. By a patient. A patient who had waited for him to exhaust himself. And he was exhausted. Vrax made a decision. He would not try to escape. He would not try to fight. He would communicate. He sent a message to the human ship. I am ready to listen. The reply came instantly. Good. We have been waiting. A shuttle arrived. It was the same shuttle that had brought Elara. This time Vrax boarded it. He traveled to the human ship. The interior was warm, quiet, and filled with plants. He had never seen plants on a ship. He had never seen anything alive that was not meant to be killed. Elara was waiting for him. She did not speak. She simply sat and looked at him. Vrax sat across from her. He did not know what to say. He had never spoken to prey. He had only hunted. Elara spoke first. You have hunted for 1,000 years. You have killed without mercy. You have never asked why. Vrax nodded. I am asking now. Elara smiled. Then you have already learned the first lesson. The lesson that the hunt is not about the prey. It is about the hunter. It is about what you are running from. Vrax was silent. He had never thought of it that way. He had always thought he was hunting. Now he realized he had been hiding. Hiding from himself. And the humans had found him anyway. Vrax stayed on the human ship for a week. He learned about the humans, their history, their wars, their near destruction. He learned that they had once been like the raiders. Hunters. Predators. But they had learned. They had learned that the hunt did not satisfy. It only emptied. They had chosen a different path. Not because they were weak. Because they were strong enough to change. Elara asked him what he wanted. Vrax struggled to answer. He had never been asked. He had only ever taken. He finally whispered, I want to stop running. Elara nodded. Then you have already begun. She returned him to his ship. The raider fleet was still there. Still paralyzed. But Vrax was different. He gave an order. A strange order. An order that had never been given in a raider fleet. We're going home. And we are never hunting again. The crew was confused. But they obeyed. The fleet turned. It left. The human ship did not follow. It simply watched. The raiders were free. But they were also changed. They had learned what the humans had wanted them to learn. That the hunt was not a victory. It was a prison. And they had finally found the door. The Zarnak raiders did not hunt again. They returned to their home worlds and began to rebuild. Not as hunters, but as citizens. They dismantled their weapons, repurposed their ships, and started farms, schools, and hospitals. The galaxy was stunned. The most feared predators in the universe had simply stopped. Not because they were defeated. Because they had been taught. The human vessel had vanished. It did not leave a trace. It did not send a message. It simply went silent, as it had always been silent. The raiders, however, could not forget. They had been changed. They had been shown that there was another way. A young raider named Kale, who had been a child during the hunt, grew up hearing the stories. He heard of the silent ship, the patient humans, the lessons that had been taught. He decided to find them. He built a small ship and set out across the galaxy. He searched for years. He found nothing. Then one day he received a message. Not a transmission. A feeling. A presence. "We are here," the feeling said. "We have been waiting. Not for you. For everyone. Come. Sit with us." Kale followed the feeling. He found the human vessel. It was floating in an empty system, silent and patient. He boarded. He sat with the humans. They did not speak. They simply sat. Kale felt something he had never felt before. Peace. He stayed. He learned. He became one of them. Kale's transformation spread. Other raiders, hearing of his journey, sought out the human vessel. Some found it. Others did not. Those who found it were changed. Those who did not were changed by the stories. The raiders, once predators, became pilgrims. A galaxy that had once feared them now welcomed them. They had learned to listen. They had learned to wait. They had learned that the hunt was not the only way. A human historian named Sora studied the raiders' transformation. She wrote a book titled The Silence of the Hunt. She argued that the humans had not changed the raiders. They had simply shown them a mirror. The raiders had always had the capacity for peace, she wrote. They had simply forgotten it. The humans reminded them. Not through force. Through presence. Through patience. Through silence. The book became a classic. It was read in schools, in homes, in council chambers. The raiders, reading it, nodded. They had not been forced to change. They had been invited. And they had accepted. The invitation, Sora wrote, was the most powerful force in the universe. Not because it demanded, because it offered. And offers freely made are the hardest to refuse. The human vessel did not seek out the raiders. It did not seek out anyone. It simply remained in its empty system, silent and patient. Those who found it did so by choice. Those who stayed did so by choice. The vessel did not force anything. It simply offered presence. And presence, the humans had learned, was the most powerful force in the universe. A young Veth pilgrim visited the vessel. She had heard the stories of the raiders' transformation. She wanted to experience it for herself. She boarded the ship. She sat with the humans. She felt their presence, their patience, their silence. She wept. She had spent her life searching for answers. The vessel had given her something better. A question. The question was, what are you running from? She did not know the answer. But she was willing to find it. She stayed on the vessel for a year. She learned to sit in silence. She learned to listen to herself. She learned that the answers she had been seeking were not outside her. They were inside. She left the vessel changed. She did not need to find answers anymore. She needed to ask questions. And that, she learned, was enough. The Veth pilgrim's transformation spread. Others, hearing her story, sought the vessel. They sat with the humans. They felt the presence. They asked the question. They left changed. The vessel became a place of pilgrimage. Not because it was holy. Because it was honest. It offered no answers, only presence. And presence, the pilgrims learned, was the only thing that could heal. A young human child, born on a colony world, asked her mother what the vessel was. Her mother, who had visited it herself, smiled. It is a reminder that we are not alone. A reminder that we can be silent. A reminder that we can listen. It does not teach us anything new. It reminds us of what we already know. The child asked if she could visit it one day. Her mother nodded. When you are ready to sit in silence. When you are ready to ask the question. When you are ready to be present. The child nodded. She did not fully understand. But she would. She would grow up in a galaxy that had learned to listen. A galaxy that had learned to be silent. A galaxy that had learned that presence was the most powerful force of all. And one day, she would visit the vessel. She would sit in silence. She would ask the question. She would be present. She would be changed. Generations passed. The vessel remained, a silent presence in an empty system. The pilgrims continued to come. They sat with the humans. They felt the presence. They were changed. The raiders, once predators, were now the vessel's most devoted guardians. They protected the system, not with weapons but with presence. They did not allow conflict near the vessel. They did not allow fear. They simply waited. A young raider named Sora asked an elder why they guarded the vessel. The elder, who had been one of the original pilgrims, smiled. Because it saved us. It showed us that we could be something other than hunters. It showed us that we could be present. We guard it not to protect it. It does not need protection. We guard it to honor what it taught us. Sora asked if the vessel would ever leave. The elder shook her head. It will never leave. It is part of us now. Part of our story. Part of our hope. As long as we remember it, it will be here. Sora nodded. She looked at the vessel. She did not see a ship. She saw a presence. A presence that had changed her ancestors. A presence that would change her. She was not afraid. She was grateful. She was ready. She boarded the vessel. She sat in silence. She asked the question. She was changed. The vessel's influence spread beyond the raiders. Other species, hearing of the pilgrimage, came to sit in its silence. They left changed. They learned that the vessel did not offer answers. It offered space. Space to be silent. Space to be honest. Space to be present. A young Veth poet visited the vessel and wrote a verse that became famous. In the silence of the vessel, / I found not answers, / but the courage to ask. / I found not peace, / but the strength to be present. / I found not myself, / but the possibility of becoming. The verse was carved into stone at the vessel's entrance. Visitors read it and nodded. They did not speak. They did not need to. The verse had said everything. A human child, visiting with her mother, asked what the verse meant. Her mother, a pilgrim, thought for a moment. It means that the vessel is not a place of answers. It is a place of becoming. We come here not to find ourselves. We come here to become ourselves. And becoming, unlike finding, never ends. The child nodded. She did not fully understand. But she would. She would grow up in a galaxy that understood that becoming was more important than being. And that the journey, not the destination, was the point. The vessel's guardians grew. Beings from every species volunteered to protect the system. They did not build walls. They did not build weapons. They simply sat in the silence, watching, waiting, present. The vessel had taught them that presence was the most powerful force. Not power. Not weapons. Presence. A young KRL guard asked an elder why they did not need weapons. The elder, a human, smiled. Because we are not here to fight. We are here to be. The vessel does not need protection. It is already protected. By the silence. By the presence. By the choice. The choice to be here. The choice to be present. That is the only protection we need. The young guard was confused. But what if someone attacks? The elder's smile did not fade. Then they will find not a fortress. They will find a mirror. A mirror that shows them what they are running from. And if they are ready, they will stop running. That is what the vessel does. It stops running. The young guard nodded. He did not fully understand. But he would. He would sit in the silence. He would feel the presence. He would learn that the greatest defense was not a wall. It was a mirror. And mirrors, unlike walls, could not be breached. They could only be faced. The mirror metaphor spread. Other species, inspired by the vessel, built their own mirrors. Not physical mirrors. Philosophical mirrors. Systems of reflection that showed beings what they were running from. The galaxy, once defined by fear, became defined by reflection. A young human child asked her grandmother why the mirrors were so important. Her grandmother, who had visited the vessel, smiled. Because they show us the truth. The truth that we are not running from others. We are running from ourselves. The mirrors help us stop running. The child asked if the mirrors ever hurt. Her grandmother nodded. Sometimes. The truth can hurt. But the pain is temporary. The hiding is permanent. The mirrors help us choose. Choose to face. Choose to heal. Choose to stop running. The child nodded. She understood. The mirrors were not easy. They were necessary. They were the only way to stop the cycle. The cycle of fear, of running, of hiding. The cycle that the vessel had broken. The cycle that the mirrors were helping to heal. She looked at her grandmother. I want to stop running too. Her grandmother hugged her. Then you already have. The child smiled. She was not afraid. She was ready. She was present. And that, she knew, was enough. Thousands of years passed. The vessel remained, a silent presence in an empty system. The mirrors spread across the galaxy, systems of reflection that helped beings face their fears. The raiders, once predators, were now teachers. They taught other species how to build mirrors. They taught them how to stop running. A young human historian named Sora visited the vessel. She had studied its history, its impact, its legacy. She wanted to see it for herself. She boarded the vessel. She sat in silence. She felt the presence. She wept. She had spent her life studying the vessel. Now she understood it. The vessel was not a ship. It was a relationship with the self, a relationship with the other, a relationship with the universe. She stayed on the vessel for a year. She learned to be present. She learned to be silent. She learned to be. She left the vessel changed. She wrote a book titled The Vessel and the Mirror. She argued that the vessel had not changed the galaxy. It had shown the galaxy that it could change itself. The book became a classic. Its final line was quoted everywhere. The vessel does not give answers. It gives questions. And questions, unlike answers, never stop growing. The vessel's influence reached the edges of the known universe. New species, newly contacted, were introduced to the mirrors. Some accepted them. Others resisted. The vessel did not force acceptance. It offered presence. It offered a choice. A young being from a distant galaxy visited the vessel. She had heard the stories of the raiders' transformation. She wanted to experience it for herself. She boarded the ship. She sat with the humans. She felt their presence, their patience, their silence. She wept. She had spent her life searching for power. The vessel had given her something better. A question. The question was, what are you protecting? She did not know the answer. But she was willing to find it. She stayed on the vessel for a year. She learned to sit in silence. She learned to listen to herself. She learned that the protection she had been seeking was not external. It was internal. It was the protection of her own heart. She left the vessel changed. She did not need to protect anymore. She needed to be present. And presence, she learned, was the only protection that could not be taken away. The question spread. What are you protecting? Beings across the universe asked themselves. They asked each other. They asked the silence. The answers were not always comfortable. But they were honest. And honesty, the vessel had taught them, was the only foundation for peace. A young KRLL asked his elder why the question was so important. The elder, who had visited the vessel, smiled. Because it shows us what we truly value. Not what we say we value. What we truly value. When we know what we are protecting, we can protect it better. Not with walls. With presence. The young KRLL asked if he could visit the vessel. The elder nodded. When you are ready. When you are ready to ask the question. When you are ready to sit in silence. When you are ready to be present. The young KRLL was silent. He was not ready. But he wanted to be. He began to practice. He sat in silence for a few minutes each day. He asked himself the question. He listened to the answer. He was not always comfortable. But he was honest. And honesty, he learned, was the beginning of change. He would visit the vessel one day. He would sit with the humans. He would feel the presence. He would be changed. He was ready. The young KRLL visited the vessel. He boarded it, sat in silence, and felt the presence. He asked himself the question. What am I protecting? He listened. He heard the answer. He was protecting his fear. His fear of being weak. His fear of being seen. His fear of being vulnerable. He wept. He had been protecting a prison. He had been hiding from himself. The vessel did not judge him. It simply held him. It let him feel his fear, fully, without resistance. He stayed on the vessel for a month. When he left, he was not the same. He no longer needed to protect his fear. He needed to face it. He returned to his world and built a mirror. A small one in his garden. He sat before it every day. He asked himself the question. He listened to the answer. He faced his fear. Slowly the fear faded. Not because it was gone. Because he had stopped running from it. He had learned that the greatest protection was not a wall. It was presence. The presence to face what he was afraid of. The presence to be with it. The presence to let it go. He was free. Not because he had conquered his fear. Because he had stopped running from it. And so the story continues, not as a legend, but as a living presence. The vessel remains silent and patient. The mirrors spread. The questions echo. The galaxy, once defined by hunting, is now defined by reflection. A child is born on a world that was once a raider stronghold. She grows up in the shadow of a mirror. She learns that her ancestors hunted because they were afraid. She learns that her ancestors stopped hunting because they were brave. She learns that she is part of the reflection, part of the question, part of the presence. On her 10th birthday, she visits the vessel. She boards it, sits in silence, and feels the presence. She asks herself the question, what am I protecting? She listens. She hears the answer. She is protecting her hope. Her hope for a future that is not defined by fear. Her hope for a galaxy that is not defined by hunting. She weeps. Not from sadness. From recognition. She is part of something larger. She is part of the vessel. Part of the mirror. Part of the question. She returns home and plants a seed in her garden. A small one in a small pot. She waters it daily. She watches it grow. She learns that reflection is not built in a day. It is built in moments. And moments, she knows, are enough. The child grows up to become a mirror keeper, like so many before her. She tends the mirrors, helping others face their fears. She does not seek fame or power. She seeks reflection. She learns that the hunt was not the enemy, the fear that built it was. She learns that the vessel was not the answer, the presence it taught was. She spends her life sharing this lesson. Not through lectures, through presence. She sits with the fearful, the angry, the lost. She does not offer advice. She offers silence. She offers space. She offers a question. What are you protecting? A young Veth asks her why she asks the question. She smiles. Because the question is the mirror. It shows us what we are hiding from. And once we see it, we can stop hiding. The Veth asks if she ever gets tired. She laughs. Yes. Every day. But tired is not the same as done. And I am not done yet. She continues her work. She tends another mirror. She asks another question. She listens to another answer. The galaxy heals. Not perfectly. Not permanently. But enough. And enough, she knows, is all anyone needs. The mirror keeper's life is long. She sees generations pass. She sees the mirrors grow. She sees the vessel, now a memory, a presence, a teacher. She sees the galaxy slowly become more reflective. She does not take credit. She gives it to the questions, to the silence, to the presence that listened. On her deathbed, she asks for one thing. Her family, gathered around her, asks what she needs. She whispers, plant a seed. Anywhere. For me. They do. They plant a seed from the garden of mirrors in a small garden outside her window. It grows into a sapling. It grows into a tree. It grows into a question. The mirror keeper dies peacefully, her hand resting on the soil. The tree's leaves whisper her question. What are you protecting? The garden holds her. She is not gone. She is in the roots, in the branches, in the questions that will grow from her tree. She is part of the cycle, part of the mirror, part of the galaxy that she helped to heal. And that, she had always known, was enough. Not victory, not conquest. A question planted with love. A life lived with presence. A voice heard once. And that voice, echoing through the ages, would never truly die. It would grow. It would bloom. It would become a mirror, not of fear. Of protection. And so the story ends, or does not end, because stories, like questions, do not truly end. They grow. They branch. They scatter. The hunt, once a way of life, is now a memory. The mirrors, once small, are now vast. The vessel, once feared, is now revered. The galaxy, once defined by hunting, is now defined by reflection. Not by force, by choice. A child is born on a distant world, unaware of the hunt, the vessel, the question. But she will learn. She will hear the story. She will feel the presence. She will ask the question. She will plant a seed. She will tell a story. She will become part of the cycle. The cycle that began with a single silence. The cycle that continued with a single question. What are you protecting? The cycle that will never end, because beings will always hunt, and beings will always learn to stop. The humans, who showed the raiders a mirror, are now part of its rhythm. They are the questions, the keepers, the quiet voices in the silence. They have taught the universe that hunting is not the answer. Reflection is. And the universe, finally, has learned. Not perfectly, not permanently, but enough. Enough to keep asking. Enough to keep reflecting. Enough to keep planting seeds. The seeds are planted. The questions are echoing. The universe is reflecting. And somewhere, in the heart of a mirror, a flower blooms. It has no hunters. It needs no hunters. It is simply itself. And that, the humans have taught, is the greatest lesson of all.